Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'd like to talk about my journey and what I think we may be able to grab from it. I think we can learn a lot, and hopefully you can learn along the way, and maybe I'll learn something by telling you guys this story that is recent in my life and is important to me. It is the change that happened in my life that I feel maybe a lot of people are looking for. So I'd like to start off with a scenario. If a version of myself from 4 years ago were to meet me now, they would be astonished. I was such a different person back then. Only 4 years, and that might sound like a long time. And certainly 4 years can drag if you think about it like a bachelor's degree. That feels like it takes forever, I'm sure. But it's really not. Right? I'm 22 years old now, and 4 years ago I had just graduated high school, which is insane for me to think about. I mean, it feels like forever ago, but it's not. It was just yesterday. Time is so odd how it works like that. But I would just be astonished because I never thought that I would be here. Let me explain why. So, back in high school, I describe it as I was in a state of apathy. I just didn't care. I didn't care at all about high school. And you may say, well, that's pretty normal. And it probably is normal, and that's okay. But there was more to the story. Because of my apathy, which had deeper roots, I ended up turning to drugs. I did a lot of drugs in high school and even before high school. It started in 8th grade when I smoked weed for the first time, and it just kind of captured me. It was so new and exciting. I feel like I have an active mind, and at that point in my life, it was unchallenged and it was kind of sheltered. My parents didn't let me go out a lot. I had no social hobbies. I didn't play sports. So I was just hungry and antsy to do something. And something like weed, you can smoke it and have a whole adventure. Figuratively and literally, the whole process of getting it is, it was fun, and I still look back and it is fun. You have to break the rules and you got to know a guy and, so on and so forth, and the adrenaline rush of it all. And, you're about to get these drugs and you're going to smoke them. And, it was a childish thing, but it was fun. It was something to do. It freed me from my captivity, where I was just stuck in my room with nothing to do. So that hooked me. And I also used nicotine. I don't remember when I first started, but it was certainly before I smoked weed. Not too long before. It wasn't before I started 8th grade. But in a similar manner to weed, it wasn't, nicotine doesn't get you high, so it's not like I was chasing the high, although there is a rush and, an addictive element there with the dopamine and such. But it was more about the novelty of, I had to sneak away to the bathroom in school and meet with my delinquent friends so we could blow clouds in the bathroom. It's so ridiculous. It was super fun, though. It was some of my favorite school memories, was going to the bathroom during the lunch period and just getting absurdly buzzed in 8th grade and blowing these huge clouds and, getting caught, and you'd have to put it in your shoe and hope they didn't search you. That's a whole story for another time. But yeah, I did these things as an escape because I I was lonely, you know. Didn't I didn't have any hobbies, and it almost it provides a friend group, you know. Not only does it numbs you from your loneliness and your other problems, but there's a social setting to it. You can do the drugs together, you buy the drugs together, you adventure with the drugs together, you learn it together. You end up, you know, seeing these people in school, and you can talk about, you know, oh, you know, I did drugs, and it sounds ridiculous, but it really is it's a whole scene, you know. And it was, and I was looking for a scene, and like, if I had a better outlet, I'm sure I would have moved towards a healthier scene, but the drug scene just accepted me with open arms, and I was relieved to have some friends and to see other people, to do something social. So it got worse though, you know, and I shouldn't say worse, but it got deeper. You know, eventually I was offered some LSD, acid, and me being curious, and you know, from what I heard on the internet, the internet was not a positive influence on me at this point. I heard nothing but great things. For anyone listening, do not do these drugs. But the internet told me otherwise, so I definitely wanted to do it. And when I did it, it was a great time, great experience. I did a lot of research as to what to expect, but trust me, there's no amount of research that can prepare you for what that kind of experience is like. And I've done, you know, it plenty of times since then, and it doesn't woe me as much as it used to. And I don't actively do these things, but it was certainly fun at the time. Something interesting about that experience is it was one of the first times that I felt like a tweaker. And let me explain what I mean by that. You ever like go outside and, you know, you see someone tweaking on drugs, and it just sucks because like no one wants to see that. It's not a good thing to see. It's kind of disturbing. They're just in their own world, high, you know, they're talking and looking at butterflies, you know, that aren't there. And I felt like I looked like that because we went to this like neighborhood water park thing, and you know, there were kids there and parents there, and all I could think about was, oh, they know I'm on acid, and they might have known. But and that made me feel horrible, like awful. I don't ever want to be looked at like a tweaker. It's just not a good way to live at all. But moving on with the story, I did more hallucinogens. I tried mushrooms. I did MDMA only once. That was fun. And I would like to say, don't try any of these things at all. This is just my personal story of what I went through. And after using some of those psychedelics, I ended up going into a phase where I used Adderall, Vyvanse, and Ritalin in probably about my sophomore year of high school. And I'd like to clarify that I most certainly do not have ADHD. I consider my attention span to be quite well. I can, nowadays I can pay attention for probably, you know, with some good effort, a 3-hour session before I had to take a break. But, you know, a comfortable session, hour and a half, 2 hours. So I was taking these things for, you know, the obvious other reasons. And they were fun, but I ended up, I think I fell into a drug-induced psychosis because of these drugs, specifically the speed, and there was probably some other factors too. I wasn't taking care of myself. My sleeping was not great. I'd stay up all night and play video games, and, you know, overall not a healthy lifestyle. I was addicted to nicotine. I didn't eat right, no exercise, all the things that, you know, I do now to keep myself healthy, I was not doing at all. Because when you're young, you don't really know you're supposed to do that, I guess. I didn't, at least. But I never told anyone about that psychosis, except for one girl, and to this day, no one else knows. And yeah, my parents didn't notice. They didn't really pay much attention to me at that point in my life. And I also kind of kept my distance. I didn't like talking to them. It never really was a good time. We just had some beef brewing, I guess. And at first, remember that novelty feeling with the drugs. Like, I like things because they're new and exciting, and it breaks the mundane cycle of my life, and my active mind needs something interesting to do. And that's true. So I ended up, it was actually kind of exciting to begin with, because like I was like, oh, it's just my imagination running a little wild, but then it got scary, like I became real afraid, like that I might lose myself forever, and it's not a good thing, that's really scary. And if it wasn't for COVID, of all things, that happened around this time, I don't know what would have happened. Also, the kid that I was getting these pills from ended up stopped selling around the same time, which was great for me. Not great like for me, that I didn't think it was great because I wanted to keep going, but it was great. And with the COVID lockdown, in the middle of my sophomore year, I was forced to stop all of these drugs. Especially the pills, of the Adderall and the Ritalin, but eventually I ran out of weed and nicotine, and it really cleansed my life in that sense, which is interesting. Who knows what would have happened if COVID hadn't have happened to me. And here's a little fun side fact about COVID and nicotine for me. So I remember smoking my last Camel Crush. Horrible cigarettes. And I, was fiending, and I had to find a way to not fiend. And I ended up drinking black coffee and eating a bunch of candy to kind of ease my withdrawals, and it worked. And I've dropped the candy. The candy never stuck, but to this day, I always start my day with black coffee. It is an addiction that I will never give up, and I'm okay with it. I don't think it hurts my life in any negative way. And I love it. Truly, it's a ritual of waking. It's something to look forward to. It's a real intimate part of my life, and it means a lot to me. It might sound cheesy, but like, it really did get me out of that nicotine hole, which was super hard. I was vaping since middle school, a lot too. It's kids don't have restraint, so you'd sit there and chief a pod all day. It was Juuls and what else was there? Puff bars. There was all sorts of things. It was before this weird disposable age now where everything has a screen on it and you throw it away. If a vape had a screen on it back then, it was a box mod. And I never had one of those personally, but my friend did. And we put this 50 milliliter, like it was a concentration, 50 salt nic juice in it, which you're not supposed to do. That's for those pod devices like a Juul or a Novo. And we had this kid hit it on 120 volts, and I just remember him dying. It was awful, because you're not supposed to do that. I was afraid his lung might have collapsed, but I know this guy to this day, and he's still going strong. He's a good guy. That was hilarious, though. Horrible thing to do to your friends. But, yeah, beyond that, back to the story, after the lockdown, I went back to school for my junior and my senior year, and, time went on. I got a girlfriend in my senior year, and we had a lot of fun. I actually moved out into an apartment with a roommate during my senior year of high school, and we would go into my room, which had a red LED light, or any color actually, you could change it, and I blacked out the curtains, and we'd just get super faded and, do loving things in that room. It was a great time. We did mushrooms in that apartment a couple times. That was awesome. But I bring her up because she was attracted to who I was at that moment, which was the guy that did drugs. I had established myself since 8th grade all the way through my senior year as the drug guy. The guy that, smokes weed and does pills and whatever. So she fell in love, or maybe, who knows what she felt. That's a whole discussion for another video. But she knew that version of me at that time. She signed up for that, and she couldn't have seen where I would go. Now, in my junior year, we're going back a year, I started reading books, and not heavily, but, enough to make me think. The first book I read, I got out of the library of my school. It was Edward Snowden's autobiography. I don't know the name of it, but it was a great book about, the spy state, and apparently it's a true story, which is crazy. You should definitely read that book. It'll freak you out. And then I read some other books like 1984 and Animal Farm. Got to get on some Orwell. And in senior year, I was reading The Prince, which is a book by Machiavelli. It's about like how to keep power and, weird. It's Machiavelli, evil guy, I guess. It's an interesting read, though. The ultimate politician, I suppose. And my English teacher saw it, and she acknowledged it. She said, "I didn't expect you to be reading such a book." And we talked about it, and I don't remember what was said, but I remember it being important to me. Or at least it was important to me, and I didn't know why. And I'll get to that. She let me borrow Beyond Good and Evil, which is a work by Nietzsche, and very hard to read, and I only read a little bit of it because it's Nietzsche and it's hard to read. But going back to why that was important, I think that was the first time that someone had acknowledged me as not the drug person since elementary school. Back in elementary, I used to love math and science, and it was all about academics. I was really good at it, but family life got messy. We moved around. I lost all my friends. Life happened, and I turned to drugs, and that's where that story started, where I began this video. But she didn't see me in that moment as the drug kid. She saw me as something more, some kind of potential within me, and I felt it, and it meant a lot to me. At least I realize it meant a lot to me now, because I never forgot it. I never knew why I didn't forget it, but now I think I do, because no one acknowledged me like that, not even myself. I didn't acknowledge me to be something other than the drug guy. None of my friends thought it was feasible that I was something other than the guy that did drugs. My parents had already given up on me at that point. I was kind of an F-up, They didn't care about me, It felt like they were just waiting for me to leave the house and get on with my life. so they could do their own thing. And that hurt, but when she acknowledged me like that, it just kind of reawakened something in me, I guess. And it didn't become present at that moment, but it did continue to grow over time. And let's move on to that time. After high school, I lived a pretty normal life. I graduated. I started doing drugs less and less. I found weed didn't really make me feel good anymore. It only made me feel guilty and shameful. And those problems that are in the back of your mind that creep through your life, they're there, and no matter how much you ignore them or try to ignore them, they don't disappear. They only grow stronger until they eventually boil up and blow up in front of you. And weed has a tendency to make you over-focus on certain things, and it seemed like every time I'd smoke weed, I'd over-focus on these problems, and it's like, that's against the entire point of smoking weed. And like, I wanted to smoke it to get away from my life, not to zoom into it, So I ended up stopping that. And, the other drugs faded as well. I didn't do psychedelics nearly as much, although occasionally I did. And I believe that those can be good, used very carefully and very sparsely. But I've done them, I have experience with them, so someone that doesn't have experience, it's probably a far different story. So I went to work in HVAC, new construction. That's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And, that's the standard route for, people that aren't going to college that want to do something other than be a line cook. If you want to go anywhere and you don't go to college, as a man, you go to trade school. I don't know what women do. Maybe you get married. Who knows? The job op, I guess they can go in the trade too, but you don't see that very often. The job opportunities just aren't the same. Either way, standard route, drugged out guy. I wanted to do something with my life, so I went to work the trade, in the HVAC trade, and I did that for about 2 years, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I made great money. It was a simple life, Monday to Friday. I got my own work truck when I was like 19 years old. That was crazy. I had an F-150. It was beautiful. I'd go in these houses alone, put all the ducks up, leave, get paid per house, walk out at the end of the week with $1,000 to $1,200 in my pocket at 19 years old. That was a good time. I blew all of that money, but it was still great. And at some point I got injured, and it wasn't like an injury where I was working and I had to like stop. It was actually a slow injury that kind of crept up, and I don't even know if it happened at work. It just happened somewhere. I ended up getting a couple hernias. I looked down at my groin one day and I saw a bump, and it kind of freaked me out at first, but I went to the doctor and they said, hey, since you're young, you should probably take care of it now when you can heal. If you just get older, it's only going to get worse. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So I went ahead and got the surgery, and I was out of work for about a month and a half. And over this month and a half time, I thought, because there was nothing else to do, it was quite painful to walk, and, I wasn't going outside to garden or anything. So I thought, and I thought a lot, and there was that flame that was ignited in my senior year. It was growing that whole time, and it wouldn't let me sleep. There was a voice in my head that kept telling me, you can do more. You can do more. You were capable of more. You were not reaching your potential. Although this life is comfortable, you should do more. And you'll be more satisfied if you do more. And when I was injured and I thought about this, I was forced to confront it, and I finally caved, and I decided to enroll in community college, a decision that changed the course of my life. And everyone was kind of shook. They weren't expecting it, and that's okay. I believed that I could do it, and I was determined. So I went back to work, and I did community college. At night, I did night school, and for a few semesters, my girlfriend, that was my high school sweetheart, the one I got in senior year and had up to that point, ended up breaking up with me right after I went back to work after the surgery. Probably like a week after I went back to work, she broke up with me, and that really hurt. I really loved that woman, seriously. But it's interesting that it happened at the time that it did, because like I said before, she signed up to be with the drug guy, and to some level, like, when I got with her, I was kind of nearing the end stages of my drug use. I was done with it after the psychosis thing in sophomore year. I really didn't. I was on the downhill, but she was on the uphill. She was, still curious about a lot of drugs because she hadn't tried them, and she wanted to do them. And, she's not a bad person at all. She was in college, and she graduated with a great GPA, and I don't know what she did after that, but I have a feeling that she pursued a lifestyle that was a bit more fun, where she could smoke with friends and, drink or maybe do other drugs and have adventures, and that's fine, because when I decided to go to college, it was like a flip. I was already really at the end of my drug use, but that was it. That was like, I'm doing this thing. I'm using my mind, and I'm not doing these drugs anymore. Period. I've got to get through school. I'm doing a real life thing here, and maybe she saw that, and decided that, hey, I want to go have fun, and you want to be serious, and I don't want to be a part of that, and that's okay. But I'm not gonna sit here and theorize as to why she did or she left. That could be a whole video, and it probably will be a video at some point. But it's interesting to take note of. So I started community college, and I was super diligent. I started from the bottom of academia, intermediate algebra. This is not even college algebra. This is like pre-college algebra. And I was very humble, and I was very patient, and I did it thoroughly. I paid attention. I worked out these problems, these practice problems I didn't have to make sure I got this stuff down. I took it seriously, like it was a job. Because all I had been doing was working a real job for the past 2 years. I think it rubbed off on my work ethic for school. So I approached it like that, and it worked. My grades were good, and a few semesters later, I ended up, I was kind of in a depression, because of the whole girlfriend thing, and I ended up leaving my HVAC job because the schedule wasn't going to work with the schooling for one semester. I think I did 2 semesters while I was in the HVAC job, and then I finally left. And that was like a closing chapter closing page on a serious chapter in my life, and I'll never forget it. And I loved that job a lot, man. I had some great times working there, met some great people that have changed my life forever. But I put my pride to the side, and I moved in with my parents, which was crazy, because when I left, our relationship was bad. You know, they didn't see me as anything worth anything, it felt like. But when I came back, I feel like I'd proven myself. There was certainly a respect there that wasn't there before. I left I left home, I went to work. I paid out of my pocket for the first couple of semesters of college, um and there was a respect, and I felt no disrespect, which was relieving. It was like a safe haven that I was in. And after breaking up with my girlfriend and changing the whole direction of my life, it was really great to have family there that cared. And I don't know why they cared. Actually, I do. It's just the family life was pretty messy back in the day, but when I moved in, they cared, and it meant a lot to me to see that. They believed in me. They had faith. I wasn't the drugged out kid. I was the college kid now, trying to go to college and be a scholar. And I did. And that's the crazy part. I continued my college career, and I joined the student government, right? And after a semester of doing the student government, I became the president. And it was just crazy because it's like, me, of all people, the president of the student government at my college. Granted, it was one campus out of 7, but still, I don't care. That was an accomplishment for me. I came in, and there was a team that respected me, and I respected them. And to show up, people relied on me to show up, and it felt great. Like I was someone that people relied on, and I felt cared about. It meant a lot to me. I made some great memories in the student government, and it's just a total 180 from who I was in high school. I wouldn't believe it if you told me as a senior that that's what I'd do. I'd blow a cloud in your face and say you're full of it. But the student government position actually gave me a tuition waiver. So after I paid the 2 or 3 semesters out of pocket, the rest of my community college stay was completely covered, other than textbooks, which was even more insane. Who would have thought that me, the drugged out kid in high school, would have had a tuition waiver for college? That's insane to me. I just, it's awesome. And I don't know, I never thought I could do it back then, but when you just do these things, you end up doing them, and you surprise yourself. So I finished up my college career. At first I wanted to be a doctor, because I started college. Actually, at first I wanted to be a scientist, but then my girlfriend broke up with me, and then I really had something to prove. So I decided I wanted to be a doctor. And in all realistic senses, it was great fuel. But the reasoning was horrible. It's a really hard job to do, just to prove to some imaginary woman that I created in my head that I'm worth it. So at some point, probably like 50% of my career in, I pivoted to electrical engineering, because it would be hard enough to keep me satisfied, and wide enough to where I could move into physics or rocket science if I wanted to. And it would give me enough time and money to have a family, which is really important to me. So I finished up my higher level math classes, like Calc 1 through 3, differential equations, physics 1 and 2. I ended up taking Chem 1 and 2 because of the doctor thing, and Bio 1 and 2. So that was a great college experience. I did all my general education. I have my associate's degree now. And at the last semester this last spring, or actually I guess the fall before that, I sent out 4 applications to the 4 public schools in my state, and one by one the responses came in, and I got accepted in every single one of them for electrical engineering. And the crazier part is that I applied to the best school in the state, and which is probably in the top 30 in the nation, the United States. And I got into that one for electrical engineering. And I was one of 3 transfer students that they allowed into the program for that semester. And that leads me to here, where I'm in my first semester in university. I'm about 75% of the way through it, and I'm feeling pretty good. It's definitely been a life-changing experience moving away from home to a university town, a college town. I'm surrounded by the state's best, it feels like, academically. And it's just incredible. Like, who would have thought that I would have gotten here? Me, of all people. And I wanted to tell you guys this story because I think it's important. And it's not a fictional story. This really happened. This is my life. I'm living it now. And with all that experience, I know that I can do things that I set my mind to. Right now, I want to be an experimental physicist, which is just crazy. You hear that and you're thinking, this guy's a genius, but I'm not. I'm a normal guy. I just work hard. I'm stubborn, and I know I can do it. And if I would have said I wanted to do that after high school, I would say I can't do that. But now I have no doubt that I can do it, and I'm excited to do it, and I want to discover some of the secrets in the universe, and I'm really hyped up to do it. Like, let's go, I made it, I'm here, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. Even if I get kicked out of here, I'm still going to do it, and I don't think I will, but you know what I mean? That's the kind of mentality you got to have. You gotta want these things, and you can do it too. I want to do great things, and I think that I'm not alone in that. I had that fire in my heart to do something that would make me more satisfied. I knew if I did HVAC, I'd have a good life, but it would feel empty. It wouldn't be enough, and I hope that my story can inspire you to chase that small flame that might be in your soul right now, that your soul might be nurturing, that you might not even realize. Or maybe this just revealed the flame to you, something you've been passionate about for your whole life, but you told yourself that you were this kind of person, so you couldn't do it, or everyone else told you were that kind of person, so you couldn't do it. I don't care what your family says. I don't care what your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your self-doubts or your addictions or your financials say. I don't care what anything says. Nothing can stop you if you go for it. So go for it. Do what you're meant to do. And if we don't, then we pay the ultimate price of regret. Thanks for listening, everybody. I will see you guys in the next video, and leave a comment if this movie may have moved you or you had a similar experience. I'd love to hear about it. See you later.